Welcome back to Turning Hard Times into Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm really pleased to have with me Daniel McAdams of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. Thanks for joining me again, Daniel.
Thanks for having me back, Jay. It's always fun to talk to you.
It's always fun to talk to you. I've missed you the last couple of weeks. You were up in, up at some event outside of the Washington, D.C. area. Is that right?
Yeah, back to the old haunts. It's nice to be back down in Texas again.
But what event did you attend in
this
Virginia?
was the Liberty Political Action Conference. It's an event that's put on by Dr. Paul's other organization, the Campaign for Liberty, which is more of a political activist group. So it was it's 2 or 3 days of speeches by liberty-minded individuals. So the Ron Paul Institute had a booth there, and we talked to a lot of great folks. It's always such a thrill, Jay, as you well know, to talk to people that have read your writings and your website, and because you never know is anyone listening? Is anyone
listening? Is anybody reading my stuff? Yeah, you wonder sometimes, right?
I met some terrific people. I met a wonderful young fellow who came up to me as a Syrian American, and he said, "Father is I come from a Christian family. My father's a Syrian Christian. He wanted me to tell you, if I ever met you, that you're doing absolutely wonderful work on Syria."
Oh, great.
So
that's really good. Sure.
That feel terrific, That just, it makes it all worthwhile, really, to be touching people like that.
Well, I would like to keep up with you on that event. It's an annual event, I guess, Daniel, right?
Yes, I think it's every September.
Yeah, I should. I mean, there's so many things going on. It's difficult to attend them all. Was Dr. Paul there?
Yes, he gave the keynote speech on Friday night, and it was a great speech. And I know I'm biased, and I've seen a lot of Ron Paul speeches, but I have to say this is one of the best. It really, it was just such a treat. He was in such great form, and he just. The way he just covers every topic, effortlessly.
Sure.
None of it's written down. I think I've seen him scratch down a couple of ideas on an envelope. And that's about it.
Yeah. No, because it's what he is. It's there's nothing artificial. It's completely. What my mother told me a long time ago. If you always tell the truth, you never have to worry about remembering what you said in the past. So
exactly.
And that would be Ron Paul. Well, I want to, we haven't talked to you in a couple of weeks, so I'd like to get caught up on a few things here. But on the Ron Paul Institute, before we get to that, is that speech available anywhere for our listeners to listen to it? Is it posted anywhere?
I haven't seen it yet. I hope they will get it sorted out fairly soon, because if people want to see it, I want to see it again. So
yeah,
they'll get busy on it.
Well, when it's available, let us know, and we'll pass it on to our listeners, of course. I'd like to go to the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity website and just talk to you about a couple of the ideas, a couple of the themes that are there today. First of all, I see that Ron Paul has opined on the Scottish referendum. He says the title of his little essay is "It Gives Reason to be Hopeful." Can you explain why so?
Sure, and I think he mentions that although the referendum ultimately did fail, the referendum from Scotland to break away from the United Kingdom and become an independent country, it failed. But he says there's such an upswell of interest in the concept of secessionism, breaking down, devolving larger powers into smaller powers, and he concludes that it's great news for liberty. And I think he cited a recent poll saying that 1 in 4 Americans would support their own state seceding from the federal government. So, and for the cause of liberty, having the smallest level of government around you is the most local government around you is certainly the best. The better thing. So he's very encouraged by this. He cited several other referenda that are being scheduled in Europe, for example. We've heard about the Catalans who want to secede from Spain. And so this is all good news, he said, and we should be very happy about it. It doesn't close trade, as a matter of fact. And he makes a great point, I think, which is that sometimes countries that are put together that necessarily should not be put together, if they break up, that will solve a lot of their political problems.
Yeah.
And they may actually end up trading more.
Right, and being more productive.
Exactly. It'll be much more prosperous for both. And he holds up Ukraine as an example of a country that why not let it break in two if it wants to? It would be beneficial for all sides.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
it certainly would be, because the people are closer to their government. They're freer. They're allowed to. You wouldn't have government intervention and keeping people, thwarting people from being free and being active commercially and otherwise. So
absolutely,
that's the whole idea of the American Republic, was supposed to be a decentralized government with each state having power, which is largely eroded, of course, with certain interests controlling and dominating. So those were his comments on the Scottish referendum. He also there's also I would encourage our listeners to go to the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity, ronpaulinstitute.org, to view an interview that he did with RT, and the title of it is "Obama Has Started Immoral and Illegal War in Iraq and Syria." Talk to us a little bit about that. What did Dr. Paul say on RT about that topic?
Well, he says, first of all, the one quote that we wrote it up, and the one quote that we pointed out, which is that why is it, pardon me, I'm sorry, why is it the business of the United States, what's happening in the regions of Iraq and Syria, where this group has risen up? He points out that it's just a few thousand people who were involved in this ISIS movement, and they're surrounded by tens of thousands, hundreds of millions of individuals. I think Saudi Arabia alone has 700 jet fighters. Turkey is, after the United States, the most well-equipped military in NATO, and they certainly could handle this problem their own. And he says, this is a great point, this is a great quote, he said, why should someone, pardon me, why should someone 6,000 miles away that's been stirring this pot up for so long be the group that's going in to bring everyone together and organize the fight?
Yeah.
So...
Yeah,
he also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, and he also rightly points out that the president has taken the United States into war without a declaration of war, without even a congressional authorization for the use of force, which we all believe is not constitutionally adequate. Nevertheless, it certainly is at least some sort of an indication on the part of Congress. They have a pulse, that they're actually breathing and thinking about these things, but there's not that at all.
No. And
then you have the issue of international law, which, Dr. Paul has never been a huge fan of international law, but the fact of the matter is there's a reason for international law, because these are mutually beneficial ideas. The idea that you can't simply invade another country because you feel like it. It's meant to constrain, but it also protects.
Yeah.
So this is clearly in violation of international law, no matter how the president's lawyers try to twist it into a pretzel. There's just simply no way you can conclude that this is in keeping with international law to bomb Syria without the permission of the Syrian government.
Well, we don't care at all about international law anymore. That became clear under George W., I think. In terms of sort of the Geneva Convention and all that, the way we handle prisoners of war and torture and so forth, we have, at one point in time, I believe, and maybe naively, but I believe that our government did try to be more humane and try to be more, to try to abide by the laws of the international laws, but no more. I mean, it seems to me we have total disdain for the laws, international law, and as you say, Ron Paul's no big fan of it. But nonetheless, do we have is there anything that will hold us back from doing anything? And at the same time, it seems as though we're coloring the other guys as being the bad guys all the time, while we're the righteous ones.
Well, I was going to say
propaganda.
I was going to say the U.S. is concerned with international law when it's protesting a humanitarian convoy entering eastern Ukraine from Russia.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's international law, and that's sovereignty.
Yeah.
So it's funny, the president's speech last week to the UN General Assembly, if anyone wants to really have their jaws drop and maybe get some bruises on their chin, read this speech if you haven't seen it. It's literally days after he started bombing Syria without permission. The president said, we believe that right makes might. that bigger nations should not be able to bully smaller ones.
Oh my goodness!
I mean, this is literally as bombs are falling on little Syria.
And we're not a bigger nation, or what? I mean, what's wrong with that statement?
These people, the elites they're so detached from reality, they don't even see the lies.
It's incredible. It's incredible. Well, you had a great article today that you posted at the site, at the Ron Paul Institute site, titled "Obama Invented Fake Threat to Launch War on Syria." Well, that's tell us about that. What's the fake threat?
Well, this is quite interesting, and I did cite some very excellent work by both Glenn Greenwald and Justin Raimondo about this. If you look at this, I think this is a huge scandal, and if we had any kind of real free media in the U.S., a media that actually defended the concept of truth in the face of government lies, they would be on top of this. But this whole issue of this so-called Khorasan group in Syria that the administration basically invented out of whole cloth as an excuse to start bombing Syria. Remember, we were told for weeks that it was ISIS. ISIS was chopping off heads left and right. Mm-hmm. They were a terrible threat. Lindsey Graham said they're going to kill us all. And that was the pretext. But when it actually came down to starting to drop bombs just a couple of days before, all of a sudden out of nowhere comes this Khorasan group that the administration, White House officials was leaking information to the media, which dutifully reported that this group is much more terrifying even than ISIS. It's the most terrifying group in the world. And this is the important part. According to a U.S. government unnamed official, they were ready to launch an imminent attack on the U.S. homeland. Mm-hmm. This is what was said before the bombing. They pose, quote, a direct and imminent threat to the United States. Mm. Now, part of that's to scare the heck out of us and scare the heck out of people into supporting the war.
Sure.
But a lot of it, I think, is a legal argument. They realize that bombing Syria is illegal, and they're open to some criticism, particularly as you know, both the UK and France have refused to participate bombing Syria. They recognize that this is an illegal act. So what the Obama administration did is simply invent this threat from the Khorasan group to say that the president is not acting against U.S. and international law, because it is recognized that the president has the authority to use the U.S. armed forces to thwart an imminent attack. And you and I would see that as, the Russian ships are off the coast of New Jersey or New York, and ready to fire. But this was certainly not that. And very interestingly, a couple of days later, they started leaking into the media that, actually, this group wasn't much of a threat after all. This is what Glenn Greenwald wrote. Literally within a matter of days, we went from perhaps they were in their final stage of planning of the attack on CNN reporting to plotting was only aspirational, and there didn't seem to be a concrete plan in the works. So you're seeing what happened. They were trying to cover their rear ends by saying the president had to act on an imminent threat. Wow. It was clearly bogus, completely bogus. And really the president, if there is any such thing as the rule of law in America, the president should stand trial for something like that.
Sure.
That's why we invented, that's why the Constitution
impeachment.
Saw impeachment.
Yeah. No, we were concerned at one point in time, and I think this also cheapened that process, the whole thing with the whole spectacle with Clinton a number of years ago. Sure. With Monica Lewinsky. I mean, we would go to impeach somebody over something like that, and yet our president can bomb the hell out of anybody, any country, anytime he feels like it, without even a vote in Congress, without even thinking about it, and then make up stories like this to justify it. It's just, I don't know. I don't know, Daniel, what to say. It's just so disheartening to see how our country is behaving now, and how people just don't seem to care. I can't help but believe that if we had a draft right now, there would be serious questions asked. The main thing is that what you do is you run the country into a bankruptcy, and people can't get jobs, so they go to the military or they do one thing or another, and they just keep their mouths shut because they want to put food on their table.
Yeah.
And that's part of it, I think. But it's just incredible, and it's not the country that our founding fathers gave us, that's for sure. Well,
yeah. And, well, you know what's sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No.
Quick comment. What was really disheartening, Jay, is when all of the hype about ISIS really reached a fever pitch. You know, even on our Facebook page, where there's a pretty lively debate, we had a lot of folks who said, "Yeah, you know, we think non-interventionism is the right way to go, but sometimes you have to intervene, and clearly this is the worst that ever, and we have to do something about it." And the sad thing is, even well-meaning folks who are on our site, who are, I think, quite a bit more savvy than the average person, they can still be taken in by government lies about these things.
Sure.
And that is really disheartening, you know. And hopefully people have realized that they've been lied to once again, just like 2002 all over again.
Yeah, for sure. You know, wondering, Daniel, since we haven't spoken in a couple of weeks, can you give us an update on the Ukraine? Where are things at there now?
Sure. Well, there is a very tenuous ceasefire that has, I guess you'd say, holding. There have been, I think there were 11 people killed yesterday. What's happening is there's a group of Kiev forces that are holding the airport in Donetsk, and that's within the rebel-held territory. So they are fighting really for control of that airport. But there still is shelling here and there. What I pardon me. What I found very interesting this week, and I put something up on the Institute website, is that there have been several discoveries of mass graves or of numerous bodies buried in a single grave as the U.S.-backed forces are retreating from certain areas that they have held for a number of weeks or months. And you're seeing the OSCE. So just to say this is not you can't say this is RT propaganda or Russian propaganda. The OSCE has documented the discovery of several of these sites of multiple burials, and according to reports, these people have had their hands tied behind their backs and were shot in the head. So,
so this would have been forces that were friendly to the United States.
Yeah, these would be the U.S.-backed forces.
Sure.
And what the article that we ran pointed out, and I certainly underscored in describing the article, was, isn't it funny that the U.S. has not said a single word about this? It's as if it doesn't even exist.
Right.
Can you imagine if they had discovered in this rebel hill or pro-independence territory, if they had discovered a mass burial site of people that had been apparently executed in such a manner, you'd have the U.S. Going through the roof. You'd have Putin being accused of being Hitler again. You'd have all sorts of hell being raised about
Sure,
that.
sure.
But when it's the other guys, just silence.
Yeah, when we do it, when our forces do it, it's okay. It doesn't matter. Somehow those people don't matter. You know, Daniel, you can remember the Vietnam days. You're a lot younger than I am, but I think you would probably be even more aware than I am. We had a mass burial grave. Was it Omai or one of those places in Vietnam? I'm a little foggy now on my memory, but I'm remembering that what a big deal it was here in the United States. Of course, that was a time when there was actually opposition to the war here, when people were speaking out against the war in Vietnam. No more.
Yeah.
There's no more. Our country, we don't hear it said anymore. Nixon said our country right or wrong. Now people are just saying, well, our country, of course, it's always right. How could we question it?
Well, we did. I mean, I think there was some sort of media in opposition to the war back then. And
yes.
And I mean, I don't want to whine too much, because we do have the internet, which is fantastic. We
Sure.
have the ability to reach people. That, I mean, if we had the Ron Paul Institute in the days of Vietnam, we would have been, licking postage stamps, and it would have been extremely difficult. We can reach people immediately. So, on one hand, I'm very optimistic that technology has empowered alternative media and alternative voices. However, I think for some reason that's made the mainstream media even more beholden to the U.S. government. It's incredible. I'm often criticized because I do appear on RT,
Mm-hmm.
which is funded directly or indirectly by the Russian government, and they say, well, you're just a propagandist for the Russian regime. Of course, that's untrue because I say what I'm going to say no matter where I am.
Sure.
But the fact of the matter is, how different is the U.S. media?
Well, I was going to say. I was going to say, when I turn on CNBC, you don't hear this side. All the mainstream media, you don't hear what you're saying here. You don't hear anything about, any discussion about, it's just all one-sided. It's just completely military-industrial complex, pro-military, pro-U.S., pro-NATO, because we're the good guys and they're the bad guys, and we're going to give people liberty, right? Liberty and justice for all, right? Just like we have here at home.
Whether they want it or not.
Yeah, whether they want it, or as Hillary says, we want them to have a democracy, but our kind of democracy, meaning that we want our military-industrial, our corporations to dominate and control people over there, rather than having free markets decide who gets what. Well, it's it's very disconcerting. I want to ask you, though, before I let you go, we're seeing things going on in Hong Kong now. I know that your strength is more in Europe and the Middle East and that part of the world, but do you have thoughts about what might be transpiring in Hong Kong? It seems to me, Daniel, we have fomented unrest. I don't know if it's fomented. I don't know, but maybe there are some legitimate reasons for the people of Hong Kong to be concerned about Chinese, strong-handed Chinese government. I don't doubt that for a moment, but. But we're seeing things that look it just looks like another sort of Arab Spring type of thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. As a matter of fact, it's funny you bring it up because I'm trying to write about it today. I think it definitely needs to be covered. That we certainly have seen some indication of U.S. involvement in this, and once again, it's not to say there was no domestic unrest or unhappiness. Of course, there has to be. There is in every one of these countries.
Yeah.
But there is some indication that this young fellow, Joshua Wong, who is the leader of this, the activist group Scholarism, which is the sort of one of the leading groups, he has had extensive ties with the U.S. consulate there in Hong Kong. He's been involved. Also, the Occupy Central movement, which is another one of the movements that are pushing this in Hong Kong, has had extensive contacts with the U.S. Officials in Hong Kong. So you do see definitely some fingerprints of the U.S. and actually even of all places the Wall Street Journal blog discusses the U.S. the ties of these NGOs to the U.S. government, to possibly the CIA, and so. What does this do? Presuming that it's a legitimate movement and the U.S. is just simply trying to co-opt it, well, that certainly will undermine it. If you're unhappy with the way the Chinese government does business, well, you've just given them a great piece of propaganda to say, look, this is not people from Hong Kong doing this. This is U.S. CIA trying to undermine it. So even if you're sympathetic to these sorts of movements, you've got to say the U.S. is really messed up by getting its hands sticky.
Well, I just have to keep thinking back, Daniel, to Senator Fulbright and his ideas about when we engage in foreign wars and so forth, that it affects us at home. And the notion, it seems to me, it would be easier for me to accept the notion that we were the good guys and that we were on the side of justice and liberty and all of that if we were conducting our business in that kind of a way here at home. But since we're not, since our government is becoming increasingly tyrannical and spying on us and taxing us more and impoverishing us through the printing of money and destroying our country, then, and taking away our liberties, then I think, I'm saying to myself, wait a minute, something's wrong with this picture here. We're preaching, we're trying to tell people that we know how to run their governments when we can't even run our own for the sake of the common folks.
That's it. I mean, that's such an excellent point, Jay. That's non-interventionism in a nutshell.
Right.
The same government that can't get anything right domestically.
Right.
So people believe that somehow they can get something right overseas.
Right.
Countries most lawmakers can't even identify on a map.
Right.
It's just preposterous.
Right, right. We can't even conduct, and we don't have the right anymore, nor does any country accept us going over and helping them set up elections anymore, since we've had massive problems of our own here in running honest and fair elections. So,
Absolutely.
anyway, it is what it is, Daniel. I want to thank you for bringing us another side of the story for sure, in these different issues that are going around. Very, very important things. And folks, go to the Ron Paul Institute, ronpaulinstitute.org. And please consider contributing to this organization. They make do with a very little amount of money to help people see the other side of the story. As a citizen, you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your country, if you want to be a good citizen, to know the truth and then act accordingly and let your friends know what's going on. Tell them about the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity as well. I want to thank you very much, Daniel, for being with us again, and look forward to doing it again next week if you're available.
Thanks so much, Jay.